IntelliChief. Appreciate everyone taking some time this afternoon or this morning for our customers on the West Coast to join us for this presentation. Today, the webinar is all about IntelliChief version 4.1. So in our attempt to keep existing customers informed as much as possible as to what our development team is continuing to release in terms of IntelliChief versions, we wanted to put together a 30-minute webinar to give you some of the highlights. I know that many of you participated in the webinar we did in March on the release of IntelliChief 4.0. So what I'd like to do today is first cover what's new in 4.1, what you may have missed if you didn't sit in on that webinar for 4.0, or if you have not yet done an upgrade to 4.0, kind of round out and bring you up to speed on all the features that are available to you as an existing customer by getting to the latest release. We'll talk a little bit, as I always like to do, talk a little bit about a health check as a potential value add to your upgrade process. We'll make sure everyone's on the same page in terms of the IntelliChief end of support lifecycle, and we'll field your questions and answers at the end of the session. Session's being recorded like always, so we'll make sure to get you the recording, and if there are those of you who want to share this with others in your organization, you can just forward them the link to the recording and they can watch it as their schedule allows. So let's jump right into it. Let's talk about IntelliChief 4.1, and let's talk about the basic details of that release. The release date is slated for the end of July. It was actually our intention to bring that this release to you a little sooner, but we are pushing it out towards the end of July as the target date. So as soon as that release is available, all the release notes, any updates to the hardware, software, requirements and specifications document, all of that typical documentation that you're used to will be available to you upon general release. We can send it to you. You can request that from your account executive or get access to it on the website through the customer portal. Any customer can upgrade directly to 4.1 from any previous release. So whether you're on a very old 3.x version, maybe a more recent 3.6.2, or even if you've already done an upgrade to 4.0, it doesn't matter. From wherever you're at, you can go straight to release 4.1. So let's talk about the specific features in this release. There are really three that we're going to highlight and talk about today. The first will be support for a new mobile access server. So I'm going to explain what that is in a second. We're going to talk about additional file type support in the IntelliChief viewer. And we're going to talk about enhanced Active Directory integration. If you recall from previous webinars or release notes or whatnot, if you're on, I think, version 3.6.2, there was the beginnings of integration with IntelliChief and Active Directory. So in 4.1, we are building upon that with some added capabilities. So let's talk about these. Let's talk about the IntelliChief Mobile Access Server first. What this is, it's going to give your IntelliChief users, in particular and specifically your IntelliChief workflow users, access to IntelliChief from their mobile device without the requirement to be VPN'd into the network. Okay, so that's first and foremost, that's pretty powerful. For those of you that may use your mobile devices with IntelliChief today, you know that one of the main requirements is you can get at IntelliChief from the browser on your mobile device, but you've got to have VPN access. So that requirement goes away, really opens up the ability for your users at home, at the airport, when they're on the road, to be able to log into workflow and do things like approve an invoice. We've also created a special viewer that fits the mobile device. So it renders the information on the screen you're on your mobile device, your phone, or your tablet, for easy viewing at the end user level and ease of use. It's going to use the browser on the mobile device. So this is not an app that you would download from the App Store. It's going to utilize the browser on the mobile device. In order to get this functionality, you have to have a license for the IntelliChief Mobile Access Server. And again, that's going to enable all of your existing IntelliChief workflow users the ability to do this, and have this functionality. So if you have 100 approvers in your organization who approve invoices, and you have 100 workflow licenses of IntelliChief, by getting the mobile access server, all 100 of those users will be able to log in through their mobile device and approve invoices in that example. So some of the features, in particular to workflow, we're talking about reviewing, we're talking about approvals, particular to your AP process, we're talking about being able to GL code your non-PO based invoices that are in workflow. For those of you that use the detail index panel to put in additional data about an invoice, that is supported within the mobile device. I'll review that in a minute, as well as the ability to add notes to an invoice. That is also supported. So those are the features that are supported, the workflow features specifically supported with the mobile access server. So if we want to take a look at some of the screens and what they look like, of course, there's going to be a login screen where you can log in to IntelliChief just like you normally would do. Upon doing that, you'll see all of your inboxes and folders that you typically would have access to. So depending on if you're an approver or an accounts payable processor or someone in customer service, whoever's accessing workflow, you're going to have access to the inboxes that you're used to. And upon going into those inboxes, any particular one, you'll see a list of all the documents that are in that inbox. So in this example, invoices that are in workflow waiting to be entered. Upon clicking on or highlighting any of those documents, you'll be able to see the actual document image right there in the viewer, whether it's a single page invoice, a multiple page invoice, and so forth. You'll be able to see the thumbnail at the bottom of the screen as well, with all the pages there of that particular document. By clicking on the menu button, you'll have options to see what you can do. You can go back to your inbox. You can put in certain index values, access the detail index panel, provide your answers or responses to your workflow questions, put in your notes as well, like I mentioned previously. And that view, upon hitting that menu button, is whether you have the thumbnail at the bottom or you don't have the thumbnail at the bottom. Here's an example on the right-hand side of the screen here, where you see all the index values that, in this example, you could have applied to an invoice that's in workflow. And if this invoice is at a particular stage in workflow where you, as a user, need to add index values here, you'll be able to do that. So you'll be able to click on those fields, tap on those fields, and type in the index values that you have the authority to add if that's a requirement at the stage of workflow for where the document sits. For those of you familiar with the index panel, the detail index panel, this is a place where PO and non-PO line item detail gets captured in IntelliChief. And in particular for non-PO based invoices, it allows for GL account distribution within IntelliChief, with the whole end goal of taking all the data that's in the detail index panel and being able to export that to your existing ERP system to create the voucher in that system without having to incur redundant data entry functions. So I'm going to talk about the detail index panel as a reminder in a minute, but you can see here that that panel is supported within the mobile viewer within IntelliChief. A couple more screens just to show you. You open up an invoice and you're prompted for a question and a response that might move that document to the next stage. In this example, how do you want to process this document? And you would have a drop-down list of options to take, just like you do today from the web browser or from the IntelliChief workbench, whether it's to approve an invoice, to route it, to process it, whatever your options are, those would be represented here for you, and you could take the appropriate action. And likewise, as I mentioned, you're able to put in notes here through the mobile client. This is not the yellow sticky note annotation. This is putting a note in the actual notes tab. If you think back to the workbench or the web browser, being able to put a note in the notes tab that is date and time stamped and user stamped with who put that in there. And then if you also think back to the viewer, that notepad in the upper left-hand corner with the pencil, if there's a note that's filled in color, notifying you there's a note there. So that's the feature we're talking about here, being able to type a note into this screen. So mobile access server, giving all of your users workflow access from their mobile device without VPN. That's what this is all about here. Pretty exciting stuff, something that we've been working towards for a while based on customer requirements and just requirements in the marketplace, and really excited to deliver this to you as an existing customer. Let's talk about additional file type support. You might be asking, well, what does that mean? Because as you probably know, IntelliChief has always been able to store any document type in the repository in its native format, whether that's an Excel spreadsheet, a Word document, a PDF, doesn't matter what it is. But if they're not TIFF images, then they weren't able to be displayed in the document viewer. So the document viewer would not show the image there, but you would have the option to choose to open up that file in its native application, right? So if it was an Excel spreadsheet, you search for it in IntelliChief, it comes up, it just doesn't display. You choose the option to open it in its native application, it will launch that document in Excel. In version 4.1, there's now support for the file types that you see listed here on the screen: PDF, Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, and so forth. What happens is the documents are now stored, or continue to be stored, in their native file type. In addition to that, IntelliChief will convert those documents to TIFF format so that they can be seen in the viewer, right? So an Excel spreadsheet is brought into IntelliChief, it's indexed, it's stored as Excel, it's displayed in the viewer as a TIFF if you search for it and retrieve it, and you still have the option to open that document in its native file type to take advantage of whatever, specific features and functions are inherent in, Word or Adobe or Excel as an example. So what that might look like here, we've got a screenshot that shows a spreadsheet in IntelliChief. So we see a thumbnail of that spreadsheet. It might be very small to see, but you can see the dot extension XLSX for Excel spreadsheet there. And you'll notice, I'll point it out to you, there will be a new icon in your toolbar in addition to being able to right-click that thumbnail and choose the option to open it from its native application. But by clicking on the folder icon that's in the toolbar, that will do the same function. So by clicking on that icon, it would open up this spreadsheet in Excel as opposed to seeing it here in the viewer represented in a TIFF image format. So just giving you instant visibility to the document, read the document as it is, and then if you need to do further processing, you can open it up in its native application. And the third component is enhanced Active Directory integration, piggybacking on what was done in a previous IntelliChief release. So what we're talking about doing here within the 4.1 version is being able to copy that user information, that data from Active Directory, and bring it into IntelliChief, as well as synchronizing that data on a regular schedule going forward. So really the bottom line is, importing users. There's now an Active Directory export wizard that will export the users from Active Directory, and then those will be able to be imported directly into IntelliChief. And then going forward, those users can be synchronized. If you ever delete a user out of Active Directory, someone leaves the organization, that would flip that user in IntelliChief to a deleted status. So as you know, those users show up there, but they would be deactivated and be represented that way accordingly in IntelliChief. So keeping those users in sync, in addition to the initial user authentication that was provided previously, where you're able to store the user password, or basically not store the user password in IntelliChief, but leverage that within Active Directory instead. So basically enforcing all your password rules and change management policies that you currently have in place in your organization through Active Directory. So those are really the three key features in the 4.1 release. The mobile server, which is a license requirement, the file type support, and the Active Directory support, which are just native features that are available to you when you do the upgrade. That might require some professional services direction from us to implement them based on your requirements, but those are the latter two there are basically considered base features in that release. So with that said, we did come out with the 4.0 release in March, and really what we want to talk about is IntelliChief 4.0 and above, right? Because if you go to 4.1 directly from a version 3, you're going to get all the features from whatever you're on all the way up through 4.1. But let's take a look at a reminder of what was available in 4.0 specifically that was released in March. And the big one in that was the new viewer, right? For those of you not familiar, 4.0 now contains a new viewer for both the Workbench and the web browser. And in addition to a lot of ease of use features and enhancements in the viewer, the big one for everyone that got everyone excited was the elimination of the requirement for Java on the user workstation. So the Java requirement at the user workstation level goes away, and you now implement or utilize the new viewer either through the Workbench or the web browser. In addition, there were enhancement features around document sorting in your inboxes and searching for documents within the inboxes and different views that you could set up. Just the ability to maneuver information around on the screen as a user, zooming in with a new magnifier onto certain portions of the document, splitter line on the inbox tree, and additional support for web browsers, web browser access if you're getting at IntelliChief through a browser versus utilizing the installed Workbench. So those were the big features in 4.0. And so that new viewer from 4.0 and above, we can see what it looks like here. A much cleaner look, simpler look. You've got some new options for views. So basically being able to save different views or representation of information as it appears to you upon your search. I think I mentioned also the column sorting, right? So being able to have a list of items on the screen and being able to click the column heading to sort the entire list, ascending, descending order, vendor name, or invoice amount, or whatever the column heading is there for you, particular to the document you're looking at. If we keep looking at the new viewer, I mentioned the magnifier. So the binocular icon there is new, which will let you zoom in on a particular region of the image that you're looking at. And you'll notice the additional tabs at the bottom of the screen. So we always had that thumbnail tab there, but you notice additional tabs that in this case are labeled PO invoices and non-PO invoices. And those have to do with the detail index panel that I've referenced a couple times on the presentation. I'm going to show you that in a second. We can also see an additional search capability within your workflow inbox. So being able to type in search criteria to pull back or filter down documents that are in an inbox. So if you've got 500 items there and you're looking for a particular invoice or document type related to a vendor or a customer or some other value, being able to search down and refine that within an inbox. And as I mentioned, being able to adjust that splitter bar, which is something that I personally like, so that you can drag that splitter bar over to the right so you can see the full naming convention of all of your inboxes and folders within there, which previously you couldn't do without sliding the scroll bar at the bottom. So now you can adjust that splitter line and have an easier read of all your inbox names and the structure over there on the left-hand side. So those were specific 4.0 features, and what we don't want to do is forget about everything that was before 4.0. There are still quite a few IntelliChief customers that do not yet take advantage of some of the features in the 3.x versions that are pretty much considered best practice implementations for new customers going forward. So want to make sure you're aware of those. Some of them might be repetitive for you, but one of those being email import, right? Being able to have IntelliChief monitor a departmental email address where you might instruct your customers to send POs or your vendors to send invoices, and having IntelliChief monitor that address and automatically import those documents into IntelliChief, whether it's the attachment, whether it's the body of the email, whether it's both, right? And having those dropped into whatever workflow inbox they need to be placed for processing. So if you don't use email import today, and for example, you have your vendors emailing you invoices, to get those into IntelliChief, you're only doing one of two things, most likely. You're either printing those off out of email as paper and scanning them back into IntelliChief, or you're using the print capture capability where you open that attachment up in a TIFF viewer or in PDF, and you file print it to IntelliChief. And those are both examples of manual, a lot of manual steps that get incurred in order to do that. So with email import, those documents end up directly in the inbox that they need to be placed for processing, or maybe routed to the Capture Enterprise solution for full data capture in OCR without any end user intervention. The detail index panel that I mentioned was in a 3.6.2 release, I believe. And I mentioned those tabs at the bottom of the screen, PO invoices and non-PO invoices. And really what the detail index panel is doing is it's, at the end of the day, it's eliminating redundant data entry that you're probably currently engaged in. Use the example of invoices. Invoice comes in, you scan it into IntelliChief or you import it into IntelliChief, and you've got to do some amount of manual touching and data entry in order to index that document at the beginning of the process, that invoice. But then at the end, you also have to do that same data entry and probably more into your ERP or financial application to create the voucher or the accounts payable transaction. And so what this detail index panel allows you to do is put in or capture all of the data you need, not only to index the document in IntelliChief, but to voucher it in your ERP system. You're doing all the data entry here one time in one place. And then IntelliChief will export all that data to create the voucher. And as you can see in that detail index panel, there are fields where the PO data is contained. The invoice data is contained. We can configure this to show the data from the goods receipt table in your ERP system to all help facilitate your two-way or your three-way match process. You can use lookups to those tables to pull that information in, so you're really reducing the amount of data entry. If you do use, or if you are familiar with Capture Enterprise, which is the data capture and OCR solution, that would automatically feed this entire detail index panel for you without data entry, right? But if you're not using Capture Enterprise, our message to you is you shouldn't be keying twice, only key once. You key it here, and IntelliChief will export that data for you. And the same thing goes on the non-PO side of things, where you need to apply a GL code to the items on that invoice. So this panel gives you the ability to do a lookup to the chart of accounts and apply the appropriate GL codes and distribute those accordingly, so that after you have all the information related to the invoice, header, footer, line item detail, once this invoice is approved and once the GL codes are applied, then all this data gets exported to your ERP system, again, without you having to key the index values into IntelliChief and then key all the invoice information and the GL into your ERP system. So if you are keying, key once, use IntelliChief, and IntelliChief will export that data to the ERP system. And this is really a best practice. This is not just an IntelliChief best practice. This is considered to be probably an industry standard best practice in the whole world of content management. So definitely something that you want to consider. I mentioned Capture Enterprise, and for those of you that aren't familiar with what that is, very briefly, there are solutions or applications in the IntelliChief Capture Enterprise solution to automatically process vendor invoices, so extracting all the data you need from that invoice in order to perform a two-way match, a three-way match, in order to index the document in IntelliChief, any data you need to drive workflow or reporting, as well as create the voucher in the ERP system. All that information gets extracted, validated, verified, so that in reality, the only invoices your team has to touch are the ones that fail any validation or verification. Same thing for sales orders, inbound customer POs, extracting information off of those POs to create the sales order in your ERP system. Again, doing validations, making sure the customer's valid, the SKUs and the part numbers are correct, through a lot of validations and rules that you can configure within the system. So the whole goal of Capture Enterprise is to eliminate data entry and have your key knowledge workers only focusing and touching on the exceptions. All right. Back to AP, two-way and three-way match automation at the line level is standard part of the Capture Enterprise for AP Invoices solution. IntelliChief Analytics 3.6.2, I believe as well, was the release that this was first made available. If you've done an upgrade but you haven't implemented analytics, then you probably at least have seen the icon or the button in your viewer. And if you don't have it, it doesn't do anything for you, but that icon will launch or provide access to the license program of our analytics module. So this is really for reports and dashboards within IntelliChief, reporting on documents and data that flow through the system. The analytics module comes with out of the box what are called ready-made reports and dashboards that really measure IntelliChief, administrative type information. So system status, user status, document counts of what's being captured, really all your administrative type information. This is not just for the IT individual who might support IntelliChief. You can give this information, these dashboards and reports, to your power users as well. So if your accounts payable manager or your customer service manager need access to this type of reporting information, you can provide this to them as well. And so you can have reports created and emailed, and they can be in PDF, they can be exported in Excel, and you can just log into IntelliChief and see the dashboard. There's also self-service reporting. So the self-service reporting has to do with creating reports and dashboards for the business. So if we're talking about invoices that are open, what you have to accrue for, orders that are being processed by region, really just the overall performance of IntelliChief as it relates to workflow and the information flowing from stage to stage. You can really report on any system data, and if you think about the index values or information that is now in the detail index panel in IntelliChief, all of that data can be reported on. So IntelliChief Analytics reports and dashboards both for administration as well as for measurement and visibility on the business side of the use case for IntelliChief. Integration link. For those of you that think about integrating IntelliChief to your ERP, your CRM, your HRIS application, it doesn't matter what that application is, it doesn't matter what platform it's residing on, and it doesn't matter if it's on-premise in your environment or if it's a cloud-based application. You can use IntelliChief Integration Link to integrate to that application for the purpose of retrieving documents from inquiry screens, indexing documents, re-indexing documents. For those of you on the call that have a System I or AS400 platform with your ERP system residing there, you're familiar with certain IntelliChief integration tools. But if you have applications that run outside of that, Salesforce is a good example, right? Or ADP or Workday. Those are all examples of applications that the IntelliChief Integration Link can help you provide that same level of functionality. And again, it does not matter where that application resides. And this is non-programmatic, right? There's zero programming involved with utilizing Integration Link to integrate to those applications. So where do you want to get to? How do you get there? Whether it's 4.0, 4.1, pretty simple. As an existing customer, you're probably familiar with the upgrade process. Whether you're on a 3.x release or 4.0, right? You want to go to 4.1, just contact us. We can review the release notes with you, the technical specifications, get you a statement of work and an estimate related to our services team doing the upgrade for you, which from a 3x to a 4x release is strongly encouraged. It is a major upgrade, and it's really something that I think you want to leverage our services team for to ensure there are not any issues and you're getting the most out of that upgrade process. If you're already on 4.0 and you want to go to 4.1, we can still provide that upgrade for you. You might be a little more comfortable following the upgrade instructions, performing that on your own, but we can have that discussion. As I alluded to at the beginning of the presentation, you can think about just doing an upgrade, or you sort of think about the bigger picture, right? All these other features and functions that we're talking about, taking advantage of them and asking yourself what you could be doing better with your IntelliChief implementation, what you could be doing differently, right? Maybe today you're doing redundant data entry on invoice processing, and going forward, you could eliminate a lot of that manual effort leveraging the detail index panel. So what could you be doing better? What could you be doing differently? And there's probably a lot that you just don't know. And so the IntelliChief Health Check is something that a lot of customers will leverage, bringing one of our consultants in to really engage with you at that level to analyze what you're really doing with IntelliChief today within a certain department or functional area or business process. And, that could be everything from analyzing how you bring documents in, how your workflow is configured, what kind of database lookups you have, where do you use IntelliChief from an exception handling standpoint, if at all, what are your integration points into your back-end business applications, your security, really understanding what your current user experience is, what pain points or challenges they may be having, and then documenting all of those findings along with whatever recommendations we can make that we observe, reporting that back to you with any estimates around the level of effort to implement any changes that you might want to make. So health check is a really good value add, especially if you've not done an upgrade in a while, or if you've just been using IntelliChief the same way for the past 5 years. It's probably a worthwhile engagement to figure out what you could be doing better. Just as a reminder, every document, every release note that we publish for a new IntelliChief release has the end of support policy in it. And so for the currently published 4.0 release notes, this is the current state of affairs as it comes to IntelliChief versions. As you probably know, we are not in the process of completely dropping support for our releases, but there is an end of support life cycle, if you will. So for all versions older than 3.6, we'll still try to help you from a technical assistance standpoint if you call into support and try and provide answers to your questions or maybe workarounds to an issue you're having. But on those older versions, we do not provide product fixes. And then if we kind of work backwards from there, version 3.6, we can see that that's in a limited support lifecycle stage, and what that means there in the description. So you want to make sure that you're staying current. You're on a version that's fully supported. Most IntelliChief customers view it as a mission-critical application, and so you want to make sure that that application is fully supported in case you do have an issue. And likewise, looking to implement new features, you're not going to want to do something new in a version that is on limited support. So make sure you're staying as current as possible, and that'll give you the full benefit of working with our tech support team. So in summary, and again, trying to keep this to 30 minutes, maybe we're just stretching over it by a few. Be on the lookout for more release information as it pertains to 4.1. You could certainly do an upgrade to 4.0 today. Most customers at this stage, if they've not upgraded, are probably waiting until 4.1 comes out, but totally up to you on a case-by-case basis. A lot of information to consider, right? All of those functions that I kind of rattled off from the previous IntelliChief versions, email import, the detail index panel, analytics, capture, you name it. Could you benefit from any combination of those things? And do you lean on us a little bit more to help identify where those functions could be leveraged to a health check, or do you just want to do a standard upgrade just to get on the latest release, make sure you're supported, and you take advantage of at least the base features like the new viewer, the Active Directory integration, the file type support, things like that. So with that being said, we can take a pause here, and within the GoToWebinar console, of course, there is the questions box that you can type your questions in, and we'll take a look at that and answer as many as they come in, so feel free to submit those. For those of you that do not have my contact information, please feel free to take that down. If you don't know who your account executive is here at IntelliChief, reach out to me, let me know, and I can put you in touch with the right individual. But otherwise, if you have specific questions around the upgrade process that you want to take offline, talk about your scenario, your environment, we'd be very happy to do that, pull in our professional services team or a sales engineer or whoever we need to answer your questions and get you upgraded. So I'll take a pause for a minute. There appears to be a couple questions in the panel, so I will give a second for you to put some more in, and then I will answer those, and I'll stop answering questions, I guess, once I see no more coming in. So the first question I do see in here is, how much testing is required as part of the upgrade process. It's required. I mean, you want to do some thorough end user testing for wherever you have your use cases in IntelliChief. I was actually on a call this morning with an existing customer, and I made a joke or a comment that our professional services team will often remark that customers don't do enough testing during the upgrade process, and you got to do your testing. So especially going from 3x to 4x, you want to make sure you go through that process. So as much time as you can allocate to testing, the more the better in your CRP environment before they schedule the time to upgrade your production environment. The other question that was in here, excuse me, is the IntelliChief upgrade conducted off hours? And the answer to that is yes. Typically, your production environment would be upgraded off hours. They'll look for a mutually agreeable time scheduling that upgrade. Our services team will, where they can perform that upgrade during a maintenance window and off hours to not disrupt the end users. So our team will put together a whole upgrade project plan with you if we do the upgrade for you to make sure that processing with IntelliChief is not disrupted, and work with you on that. So that is part of the upgrade process. I'm just scrolling through. There are a couple other questions in here, and just give me a second to read those. Is it required that the IntelliChief CRP server resides on a different server from production? Yeah, let's address that. That's a question that even goes back to the 4.0 release. For those of you not familiar, CRP is our acronym for Conference Room Pilot, which is your test server for IntelliChief. When going from 3x to 4x, it is extremely recommended, that's the right way to put it, that you have CRP on a different server than production. Because if you do not have them on separate servers during that 3x to 4x upgrade, you cannot upgrade the test environment first and then schedule your production environment down the road. You have to upgrade them both at the same time if they're on the same server, and that's going to not allow you to do that important testing. So going from 3x to 4x, it is strongly recommended that you split those out onto separate servers, and if they're not, then we can include that scope as part of the upgrade statement of work to you. If for some reason you wanted to revert back after you're on 4.x, if you wanted to revert back to having CRP in production on the same server, at that point you could. So for example, revert back at 4.0, and then if you upgrade from 4.0 to 4.1, you don't need them separated at that point. It's only for the 3x to 4x, but I would say most customers' best practice is to keep them separated on separate servers, whether that's physical servers or virtual servers. There's an Active Directory question in here with the Active Directory synchronization. Can you specify an Active Directory? I'm sorry, it's hard for me to read these questions as they come in here based on my view. Active Directory, which users should have IntelliChief accounts? The answer to that is yes, you can. I chose not to include screenshots in the management console related to the Active Directory export wizard and the import wizard and all of that, but we could get you that offline and talk with you a little bit more about how you import the users and what that means. Is there a trial license for analytics or, let me rephrase that, is there a trial license for analytics and OCR? The answer to that is no. OCR, which is one component of the IntelliChief capture solution, that's its own application that involves a lot of solution design, and it's not just a snap-on module, right? It's its own true solution with a lot of different integration points. So really what we want to do is make you and the team comfortable that the capture solution will meet your needs through discovery, analysis, demonstrations, conference calls, whatever it would take, but that's not a solution that can be trialed, if you will. Same thing for analytics. So reality is we want to understand what you're looking to achieve, what are your requirements. Let's make sure the solution meets those requirements and prove that out to you. And then at that point, you could move forward with licensing as it's required. When you open a document in its native format, can you save the edits you make and view them in IntelliChief? The question you're asking, the way I interpret that question is you're asking if IntelliChief supports version control, and it does not support version control today. If you were to, open a document in its native application, such as Excel, and you made changes to that Excel spreadsheet, if you wanted to capture that back into IntelliChief and index it such that it's storing it as version 2 with a different index value, that could be possible, but that's not really true version control, right? That's really relying on the end user to version it versus the application IntelliChief to version it. I can tell you that is on our product roadmap in terms of something we want to deliver that does not have a delivery date tied to it yet. So version control is something that we could probably keep you in the loop on as the product roadmap evolves, especially for planning for late 2017 as well as 2018. Another question, do we need to do a health check before we do the upgrade, or do we do it after? It's really, the health check is independent of the upgrade. So if you're on 3.6.2, you want to get to 4.1, you don't have to be upgraded in order to do the health check. We'll come on site and perform that health check through the lens of the 4.1 features. So whatever pain points we identify or whatever observations we make, our recommendations back to you will be based on you upgrading to the latest release. So we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can be managing your upgrade process while we perform the health check, because the health check is strictly a consultative engagement. We don't need you to be up on the latest release in order to uncover what you're doing. So it's more defining the scope of what you want us to analyze and just putting the plan in place to do that. Hang on 1 minute. I am scrolling because there were some other questions that came in. They're coming in sort of fast and furious. I'm just going to scroll from the top down here. There is a question around going from the 3x to 4x release. Does each user's client need to be updated individually? I can get you that answer offline. I don't have that answer, so I can provide that to you offline. I do want to make sure I read all the questions that are in here, even if I cannot answer them. Does mobile server have to be internet accessible? And if so, how are the backend components and data sources secured? Is it compatible with access solutions like Mobile Iron? I don't know the answer to that. I can get you, we probably want to take that conversation offline, whether it's with a sales engineer or getting you, the formal documentation, which again is not available yet, right, because the solution is not released. So maybe once that documentation is available, we can have that conversation with you. My goal today was to make you aware of the end user functionality, right, from the business benefit standpoint, fully understanding that all the technical details and especially security related to that component need to be ironed out. So we can try and chase down some information for you and get that over to you to answer that question as it's available. And I do not see any questions, any new questions in here. I think there were a couple around Active Directory, and they were pretty much asking the same thing. please take down my contact info. If I did not answer a question that you presented, just ping me and we'll get you an answer. But I believe I touched on all of those here. Does not look like any others came in. So appreciate you folks participating and being a customer and using IntelliChief and being engaged. We want to continue to do more of these webinars to keep you informed. You know, you can reach out to myself or your account executive at any point in time, and we look forward to bringing you up to the latest release and continuing to evolve the solution in a partnership with you. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the week, your 4th of July holiday, and we'll talk with you soon. Thank you very much.